It's all about making complex information, complex workflows simple. First and foremost, you have to go through that hard experience of building those underlying tools. And we were very lucky that actually before the world started screaming and shouting generative AI, we were building really difficult solutions, but we were doing it the hard way, utilizing different technologies, different methodologies of techniques to build solutions that solve problems. Any company building something, ultimately you're building for somebody, you're building for an end user, you're building a solution that you want and you hope people use and people love and people come back to time and time again.
On today's Legally Speaking podcast, I'm delighted to be joined by Nnamdi Emelifeonwu. Nnamdi is the co-founder and CEO of Definely. Named as one of 50 of the fastest growing tech companies, Definely was founded by two former Magic Circle lawyers. Nnamdi is a former trainee solicitor and associate at Freshfields, and his co-founder Feargus MacDaeid set out to make legal documents more accessible, addressing the number one issue associated with drafting, reviewing, and understanding legal files. So, a very big warm welcome to the show, Nnamdi.
Thank you very much for having me, Rob. Great to be here.
Oh, it's a huge pleasure to have you on the show. And, we've got a lot to unpack in today's episode because it's a truly inspiring journey and everything you've been doing. But before we go into all of that, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is on the scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law on the scale of 1 to 10, if you've seen it?
I haven't seen it. I think I've seen one episode a long time ago. I think the theory of it sort of is fine in terms of, they do legal work or purport to do legal work, but it's just the timelines, I think each episode they do something that usually takes probably about 9 months and they wrap it up into one episode, from as a transactional lawyer, which is what I was, and even on the dispute side as well. It seems as though, disputes can go on for years and they try and wrap it up into one episode. So I would probably give it a 3 or 4 based on that. Yeah.
A very justified 3 or 4. And I tried to describe to friends, it's almost like a heart surgeon going to work one day and then they're suddenly a GP and then they're suddenly a hand doctor expert. You wouldn't necessarily want that, but all good entertainment. Yeah. All right, let's start at the beginning then, Nnamdi. Tell us a bit about your background and career journey.
Sure. So I'm a former lawyer. So I, studied law at university, then did a master's in law, and I decided to go into law because I wasn't, very good with numbers at the time. All my friends were going to banking, and I knew I wasn't very good with numbers. And the other alternative was, medicine or engineering. And again, I wasn't very good with sort of, math-based subjects. So law was sort of the natural fit for me. I was lucky enough to secure a training contract at Freshfields. I joined there as a trainee solicitor. I qualified there, and I qualified into the finance team, where I worked as an associate for a further 2.5 years. And it was during my time at Freshfields as a trainee that I met a colleague of mine who came over from A&O. I don't know at the time, Feargus. He was a newly qualified solicitor when I was a trainee solicitor. And he and I sort of worked together on the first deal we did together. And got to know each other really well. I really enjoyed my time at Freshfields. I got to work with some very, very intelligent people and some really, really high profile sort of transactions you wake up and you read about on the Financial Times and you hear on the news. So it was really sort of just an incredible experience to be surrounded in that sort of environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Cutting edge work. And I was just giggling to myself inside when you mentioned accounting, because my late grandfather, who ran his own law firm, always said, you should be an accountant, laddie. And obviously I didn't go in that direction. I was terrible with numbers as well. But let's dig a little bit deeper then, just at the sort of life at the Magic Circle, because you were a trainee then you were an associate at Freshfields, one of the best law firms in the world, undoubtedly. What did you most enjoy about training at a Magic Circle law firm?
Yeah, I remember going as a student to a lot of these open days. And I remember listening to, it was a former managing partner, of Farlands. And he gave really good advice. He said, the best training you can do as a lawyer is training at a really good, UK law firm, because at the time it was when sort of the US law firms were sort of trying to make their presence into the UK, and he said that's where you're going to get the most structured training, and they have these UK firms, because they're more established in the UK, they have a lot more resources. I'm not sure if that still holds true, because I know that the US firms have made a lot of sort of way into the UK market now. But at that time, they were still very early on, and so the UK law firms, had a lot more resources. And I just felt as though I would get the best training, environment. And I think I was very lucky, and I think I was right. I think Freshfields offered a lot. I got a very a wide sort of range of different practice areas. You could do up to 6 seats at Freshfields. So I got to do go to various different departments. I got to go on an international secondment to Amsterdam. So it was just a really great experience to have the breadth of range of work that a firm, an international law firm like Freshfields do, get exposed to that.
Yeah, and plenty of exposure and great diversity, as you said, in terms of super early on into training. We've talked a lot about law. We haven't talked about tech yet. So that's a large part of, what you're getting up to. So where did your interest in tech originally stem from, and what inspired you to co-found Definely?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily say I had an interest in tech. I was very much interested in being an entrepreneur. And that was really the main driving force for me starting a business. When I actually qualified as a solicitor during my month off, where people sort of go on holiday and take their qualification leave and travel the world or whatever they do, pick up a new hobby. I actually went to Nigeria, which is where I'm originally from, and I set up a retail, pop-up bench in the middle of Lagos market. So anyone who knows Lagos is very, very hot. It gets to sort of mid 30 degrees, during the day. And I'm there standing in the middle of it with like a retail, a bench full of goods that I wanted to sell, because the whole concept was I thought I could bring the concept of Poundland to Africa. And start that sort of concept. So not only that, I also arranged meetings with some of the big, retailers like Procter and Gamble and Unilever and Nestle to try and see if that was a viable venture. Eventually, I realized that the FX the FX would have killed the business. But I always had that ambition and that interest in entrepreneurship. Even as a lawyer, I remember when I started my training contracts, my supervisor at the time, my first supervisor, after about 6 weeks, said to me, you're great at being a trainee, but I just don't think you're going to be a lawyer for much longer, because I was always talking about business. The tech element really came because of the problem that we solved, and realized that actually this was a natural sort of synergy for sort of the interest I had and the opportunity that was there.
Yeah, no, and again, thanks for giving us that overview of your background. I was just sat here. My mother-in-law was born in Nigeria, actually, in Jos, and when we used to go there, and I know about okra, star lager, all of that great stuff. Really, really, really good times and memories. And I also, on my legal recruiting business, have helped a lot of sort of lawyers from Nigeria transition to London, because they have such rich experience, particularly in the energy infrastructure projects markets as well. Okay, so let's go into Definely then, because it's a huge success story, and congratulations. But Definely delivers AI tools for lawyers, in a word. But as the CEO and co-founder, for folks that might have been living under a rock, tell us about what Definely actually does.
Sure. So Definely is a productivity suite, mainly focused at working on complex transaction documents. So really high complexity, low volume. The sort of documents I used to work on as a lawyer when I was a finance associate, and it really purports to help lawyers, work efficiently within those documents. It sits within the Microsoft Word interface, so it was very important that we met our, the end user, the lawyers, where they do most of their work, which is obviously within sort of that Word ecosystem, and it helps lawyers create draft and review contracts. So we have a variety of different tools that do different things, but in essence, what they do is you can essentially access, precedent wording, utilizing our Vault product via your DMS. You can then utilize our draft product to read a contract, edit a contract, interact with a contract, and then our proof product allows you to sanitize it and clean it up before sending it off to your to either to your client or to your colleagues. We've then sort of leveraged AI and embedded AI within that, utilizing our enhanced product, which essentially is our agentic framework to allow the agents to access those different products. So that now, rather than doing those things manually, you can actually now do them autonomously, utilizing agents.
Yeah, and it's very impressive, and I talk very openly on the show about the importance of mission-led companies now, but also in the future. And as you know, Clio partner with us, and we get behind their mission to transform the legal experience for all. Here at the show, we're inspiring legal minds, transforming legal futures, and Definely is on a mission to simplify the way the world understands information. So, what is the meaning behind your mission?
Yeah, so Definely, for those who aren't aware, it actually started off, and I mentioned Feargus early on. So when I was a trainee solicitor, Feargus, who was the associate I mentioned earlier on, we joined at the same time, and he's actually visually impaired. And so, he was at the time one of the few registered blind solicitors in the UK. So I was just always quite curious as to how somebody like him could do the same sort of work that I was doing as there's nothing wrong with my site. And it
Yep.
was hard enough trying to access the information in these contracts because they're usually, multiple pages long. They're usually quite complex. And convoluted, and trying to access, as anybody would know, information in a contract is hard enough. But when it's a 300-page facilities agreement or an SPA, that makes it even more complicated. And so I was always really just intrigued by how Fergus was able to do that. Of course, he couldn't do it in an efficient way because of his disability. And although he had various workarounds like text to speech, which he used, it just wasn't really productive for him. So he and I brainstormed and got our heads together. And the spark that we came up with, I went away to build a sort of proof of concept or prototype of that idea, and realized very quickly that actually that was something that could help me also access the information easily as well. And as I said, there's nothing wrong with my site, so I figured if I could use it, then pretty much every lawyer could use it, and indeed anyone working on contracts, not just lawyers. So I think one of the things that we're really, really proud of is that this problem started to really help somebody who was marginalized, and where there was really no solution to help him. And it's now being utilized and helping thousands, tens of thousands of lawyers globally, read and understand and access information in these contracts more efficiently. And for us, we think that actually it can be used outside of law. The technology can be utilized anywhere where contracts are read, not just lawyers, right? It's tax memorandums, accountant reports, really any sector where you read contracts. We think the technology can be applicable.
And the sky's the limit with that. And it's great because everyone can find and complain about a problem, but not everyone can show the grit, determination to go all in to actually solve that problem. And it's a wonderful story, like you said, through meeting Fergus and what you've been able to achieve. So again, thanks for giving us a bit of insight into that. And that touches probably on the early stages. My next question is actually going to be talking us through the stages of actually building Definely from that starting point to where you are today. Is Definely now what you envisioned it to be when you first started building the tech company, given the particular explosion we've seen in this AI revolution of late?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think anyone that knows me at the start, I thought, I don't think you ever dream of, what happens when you have an idea and seek to bring that idea to life. There is no blueprint. I don't have a entrepreneurial background, and as I sort of mentioned earlier on, I don't have a tech background either. So I really, there was really no blueprint or no expectation other than the fact that I knew I wanted to try, and I wanted to start a business. I wanted to bring a company into life, and I had this idea which seemed really, really, fitting with the skills I had and sort of the ambition and the energy I had. When you look back at it, it's very easy to say, yes, all of this was to be expected because, we did the right things. But the reality is that everything we did, there was an element of luck. We had to, there's various times and when I ran out of money, and had I not been lucky enough to find investors to invest in the company, we never would have survived. There was various times where things went wrong, when we were trying to sort of pitch to law firms or corporate legal teams, and again, had we not been lucky to have a champion within that organization, we probably wouldn't have won that customer, right? So a lot of it is, obviously working hard and having a great team around me, and being able to, really hopefully motivate them to, build this the solution. But a lot of it, is luck. And we're really sort of lucky to be in an environment where, legal tech generally is just exploding, and it's really, really great for every stakeholder, not just the end user, but the law firms, the vendors, and really anyone. You're seeing a lot of investing, sort of interest in this sector as well. And I think that's growing the market and expanding the market and the opportunity for really everyone involved. So we're really excited.
Yeah, and we also see a really exciting time for legal tech, and we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of the investment journey as well. But entrepreneurship's hard, right? And I think it's very easy to kind of see the headlines, see the success, but you were sort of alluding to there, and it's what I wanted to ask next. Actually, some of those challenges, the obstacles you faced when building Definedly, because there may be other legal tech entrepreneurs listening to this that feel they have this great idea, but they can't break through. So you just give us a bit of a flavor of some of the challenges and obstacles and maybe how you overcame them.
Yeah, I mean, particularly as it pertains to legal tech, I think one thing people don't realize is just how long the buying cycle is in law. I think it's actually it's quite unique, actually. I don't think, from what I understand, and I haven't worked in any other sector, but from what I understand, other sectors are not as, the buying time and the process is not as lengthy as, the sales process isn't as lengthy as it is in law. It can take up to, 18 months sometimes, probably longer. There are customers that we've been working on for years and, we still haven't signed them and, it's still ongoing, right? So I think that's the first thing people don't realize. You think, it's only fools and horses. It's nothing like that. I always say to people, whatever timeline you have, realistically add 7 years. That is always the feedback I give to people because it's a really lengthy process. It's also a very lonely process as well. In the early days where it was pretty much just myself trying to figure everything out and, didn't really know what I was doing. And, you have to have that sort of self drive and that self motivation to keep going when there are no answers. There's no sort of, easy sort of book to read to say, okay, this is what I do next. You have to figure everything out yourself. So you have to really be also quite curious, as actually not be afraid to go out and try things and ask questions and ask for help, importantly as well. Our company would not be anywhere where it is if it wasn't for all the people who sort of helped us to get here, be it my team, be it my investors, be it our customers. So yeah, it's a really, really difficult, I'm not going to sort of, I think there's a tendency to people make entrepreneurship like glorify it and really focus on all the great things and the successes and the highlights of it. But the reality is that those things are actually very, very few and far between. The real reality is that actually most of it is quite boring and quite, it's drudgerous, right? It's not fun. It's like a lot of it is your back is against the wall and you're trying to sort of find solutions to problems you're facing every day.
But that's why the story cuts through. I remember, and that's why, you hit the headlines when these successes happen. Because when I set up my businesses, I remember a mentor said to me, Rob, if you have 50 good days in a year, you've had a tremendous year, like an outstanding year. And to your point there, the more risk you take, potentially the luckier you get as well. And staying in the game. And I love that you talked about self-accountability and self-belief, because I remember, again, a mentor said to me very early, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. You have to take self-accountability, particularly when the chips are down, you get those knockbacks. And I think it's really sage advice in terms of lawyering. And there's some law firms that I would still love to recruit and transact with, 9 years into the industry, that we still haven't quite broken through. And I think if you see this as staying in the game, nurturing, fostering relationships, adding value, really becoming client-centric with what you're doing, eventually they will convert. And you've touched on before a bit about defining your solutions, but I want to go deeper because what you're building is truly innovative and it is really helping day-to-day life of legal professionals. So you have the following solutions: Definedly Vault, Draft, Enhance, Cascade, Proof, and PDF. So can you just touch on these sort of briefly and a bit more about what the solutions offer?
Sure. So I guess the best way to describe the solutions is the chronology of how they actually work. When you're, a contractor, a sort of facilities agreement, right? The first thing you would want to do is, create and draft that contract in accordance with, whoever you're advising, their sort of wishes and, the sort of, what they're trying to achieve, right? Typically what would happen is that you would go to, either a senior lawyer and say, hey, is there a precedent we worked on previously with this particular client? Can we have that precedent? And we will use that as a starting point. That's what Vault tries to emulate, right? It accesses your DMS, and you can actually now, rather than having to go speak to somebody, you can actually just type in a few sort of key sort of searches, and it comes up with, okay, this is the fitting sort of provision or clause or definition or even document, as a precedent, and it sort of has your gold standards that you can sort of choose as a firm and utilize that. Once you've then done that process, Draft, which is our sort of our first product that we launched, what that does is its USP is to allow you to just stay in one place. And from where you are, you can interrogate the contract as well as manipulate the contract. So what that means is that I can actually, in that 300-page contract, I can be on page 10. And from there, I can read the entirety of that contract as well as any related contract, as well as edit any part of that contract without ever having to leave page 10. Then you have, once I've done that, I've created it, I've reviewed it, negotiated, drafted it. I then want to clean it up before I send it off to my client or maybe to the partner who's, or to the more senior lawyers. That's where proof comes in. So that's a proofreading solution that allows you to sanitize the contract, things like, square brackets that are missing, if there are any undefined terms, to remove all of those issues. And then finally, our PDF solution essentially is what Draft is, but for PDF contracts. As we know, we tend to get a lot of PDF contracts, and they can be quite tricky to, review or to navigate through. So it brings a lot of that functionality that you have in Draft within PDF. And then Enhance and Cascade, those are agentic, those are AI offerings. So as I mentioned, Enhance, the way we think about AI is that AI really, really works if you have the underlying tools for which those agents to call upon, right? So the reason our enhanced product works so well is because we have Vault, we have Draft, we have Proof, and now they can call upon the best tools, which are these underlying products we have, to do the task at hand, right? And then Cascade is a first of its kind, which we're really, really excited about. So this tracks the consequential changes that happen when you do something to a contract. So let's say I change the definition of the financial indebtedness. It can say, okay, now I've done that, I may want to go and look at the clause financial indebtedness. I may want to go look at my change of control provision, my events of defaults, my reps and warranties, and it tracks the first, second, and third layers of changes throughout the contract as a result of making a change, a particular part of that contract.
And that is so, so valuable, because I've interviewed professional liability lawyers, and one word can potentially cost billions. And so that level of quality of what you built is fantastic. Okay, you talk about sort of definitely making and accessing and understanding information within legal documents simple. I love how you sort of describe those workflows there. And I always talk about you want fusion rather than confusion when you're trying to implement and do things. But how is Definely delivering on that? What would you say separates you in terms of that real ease of understanding information?
Yeah, I think for us, it's all about, understanding the problem and going really deep into that problem, right? We have been working with sort of lawyers over the last 5 years, really going really deep into understanding the way they work on these contracts. We are fortunate enough to work with some of the biggest, law firms and corporate legal departments globally, the likes of, A&O Sherman, Slaughter and May, DLA Piper, Evershed, Cravath. But also the likes of like JP Morgan, Barclays, IKEA. So we've really worked with these companies to understand the problems that their lawyers have when working on sort of complex contracts. And we've worked with them and added all of those, the feedback we've received from them over the years, into our roadmap, and work with them to build solutions to solve those problems and solutions that are really tailored to the problems as opposed to just being generic. So the way we think about sort of what we do is that we focus on going deep and really understanding the workflows. And for us, if you can do that, that's how you simplify. It's all about making complex information, complex workflows simple. And for us, it's all about simplifying that and coming out with the best sort of, not just the best solutions, but also introducing those solutions with the best UI, for example, the best user experience, so that ultimately what you're doing is creating a solution that the best fits for the end user and the problem that they have.
I love that, because you're exceptionally customer and client focused there. And that obviously builds trust, and you can be specific. Listeners will be sick and tired of me saying it, but specific is terrific. When you've read that, it's so, so true. And that sort of inch wide and mile deep, really going in onto the heart of the problem. So I'm going to be more specific then. You've talked about that, but give us a couple of examples then of some of the specific pain points, both law firms and lawyers, that you've solved.
Yeah. So, I mean, Cascade is a very good example of that, right? We realize that actually there is, if I'm a junior associate, there's no manual that tells me how to actually review a contract. A lot of the time I'm like, spending hours and hours trying to think about, what the changes that happen and the sort of natural consequences that happen as a result of any edits I make to a contract before I send it off, before I'm brave enough to send it off to the partner to do their final review, right? And so, Cascade was one of those things, those problems where we were working with lawyers and saying, hey, okay, let's think about that workflow with you, right? Yes, it's never going to be 100% sort of, technology. You're going to still need a lawyer in the loop to do the final checks and make sure that the answers are sort of, fit for purpose. But we can get you 95% of the way there, right? So that you're not having to spend 100% of your time doing that. You're spending really that 5% where you need that like really high value review, but how can we utilize technology? How can we use the experience that we have working with some of the biggest and best law firms and corporate legal teams globally, and the technologies that we've built out over the years? How do we leverage these tools to create a problem that sort of gets you sort of a lot of the way there, right? And Cascade was that. We worked with our law firm, customers, as well as our corporate legal teams, and we worked with them over the last 18 months. We sat with them, we told them sort of, we went through the various workflows with them, we reviewed the contracts with them, we went, we iterated on the solution, we, had the first version, got it, does that do it? Okay, yes, that's good, but think about this or add this, and we did that. We went through that sort of back and forth, and I think it's only, to your point, being sort of customer centric like that and really going deep and working hand in glove with the customer and the end user. That's how you get sort of solutions that are fit for purpose and not just trying to see, what problems they can solve. So we are very, very happy, confident with our solutions because they're already battle tested. I think one of the things that we pride ourselves in is that we are, I think it's gone of the times when people actually launch, solutions out of the box that solve a problem, right? Nowadays you hear about a lot of these AI tools that are, hey, we've got this AI tool, but we want to work with, customers to see what solutions they can solve. And I'm like, no, surely that is not the way to do it. Surely the way to do it is to identify the problem with that end user, go through those hard yards of, solving and going deep and helping them coming up with the right solution for that, and then launching and saying, hey, this is the solution for that specific problem because we've battle tested it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Clio. Are you frustrated with your current legal management software? You're not alone, and thousands of solicitors across the UK feel your pain. However, the hassle of moving all their existing client and case data holds most back from switching, prolonging the frustration. Clio is here to help. Their dedicated migration team will be with you every step of the way while you transfer your information, and if you have any questions, you'll get award-winning support available 24/5 by live chat, phone, and email. So help is always there when you need it most. It's no wonder Clio is consistently receiving 5-star ratings for its ease of use and top-notch service. If you're ready to leave frustration behind, visit clio.com/UK to learn more and see why Clio continues to be the go-to choice for solicitors across the UK. Now back to the show.
I think it's such valuable advice there. And you make a good point. It's hard, right? Yes, it all sounds lovely, but actually it's hard because they're challenging you, but they're giving you that feedback that's fit for purpose for that market. So you'll have the right market fit product rather than trying to be just everything and hoping and sort of guessing demand. That is the demand telling you what you need. So I love that. Okay, I'm going to stick with being specific because we've talked about Definely Vault, but let's go a bit more into that because it's a Microsoft Word add-in, an AI-powered drafting system. Brilliant. So talk us through stage by stage how the Vault actually works. Again, for lawyers listening in, first time they've heard about Definely, they need to go and speak to their bosses and be like, we need this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when you think about, agents became all the sort of, all the raw sort of probably, about 12, 18 months ago, whatever it was. And everyone got really excited about agents. But then, when you sort of take a step further and say, okay, it's great that we have an agent, but really the way we think about agents is that for agents to really work, you need an underlying tool for which that agent can call upon, right? If you don't have that underlying tool, it's literally just essentially leveraging an LLM, which anybody, in our opinion, can do, right? So I think first and foremost, you have to go through that hard sort of experience of building those underlying tools. And we were very lucky that actually before the world started screaming and shouting generative AI or sort of agents, we were building really difficult solutions, but we were doing it the hard way. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't easy. It wasn't, leveraging, it was utilizing, different technologies, different methodologies of techniques to build solutions that solve problems. That's how we got our draft solution. That's how we got our vault solution. That's how we got our proof solution. And then we were just very fortunate that actually now the world has sort of tuned into agents. And actually, as I said, for an agent to work, you need the underlying tools for which those agents can call upon. So that's what Vault does. Vault is our agentic offering, but Vault leverages the underlying tools that we've built already to do various things. So when I'm reviewing or drafting a contract, what Enhance does is that it can call upon Vault to say, hey, I want to draft this contract, but can you leverage defining Vault to get me the precedent to have the best sort of wording or the best document to start with. And then simultaneously, I can also call upon defining proof utilizing our Enhance offering to say, hey, can you proofread and sanitize this contract at the same time, right? So Enhance allows our sort of agents to call upon the underlying sort of, Vault, draft and proof tools to do various things.
And that's a powerful ecosystem, isn't it? I think if you can build that and they work flawless, then it's going to be super powerful, and you're going to reduce that friction. You're going to improve those workflows. You're going to make a lot of life for lawyers better. Again, all sounds great, but legal tech can be very intimidating.
Yep.
We're seeing buzzwords, we're seeing headlines, we're seeing lots of things, but there's no point building the tech unless we're getting that high level of adoption, and then that's actually carrying through with the results, the efficiencies, the pass on gains to clients, etc., etc. So how, again, specifically is Definely ensuring the tools stay sophisticated but are super easy for the lawyers to actually use, so they're adopting them?
Yeah. So I think, and that's a really, really good point. I think there's no point having these great, technology and AI has incredible opportunities, right? And there's so many things that we can do with it that we haven't even scratched the surface. But I think as it pertains to law and the legal industry, one of the biggest barriers is that actually are people utilizing these tools, and also are they utilizing it then, in a way where they're sort of getting the sort of ROI on them, right? And I think that's an important thing for any company, right? Any company building something, ultimately you're building for somebody, you're building for an end user, you're building a solution that you want and you hope people use and people love and people come back to time and time again, right? And for us, that's always been sort of key to this business. When I started this company, I've always said it's actually, what we do with our customers is more important for me than trying to win new customers, because actually that's how you grow a business. It's by satisfying your existing customers, because guess what? They're going to come back. They're going to expand with you. They're going to grow with you. And they're probably going to increase your sort of your revenue more so than you will get from just getting new logos. Like if you think about sort of when you go fishing, right? It's all great having, catching a lot of fish, but if you have a massive net, a hole at the bottom of your net, you're just losing the fish you catch as you do so. So for us, it's always been very important to be super customer centric. From the outset, we have customers all over the world. I've recently just, we've recently just put something in place where we go and visit our customers all around the world at least once a year. We speak to our customers regularly. We go out to them to train them. We work with them to find champions to help, train the champions so that they can be, trainers of trainers, if that makes sense. So we work hand in glove with our customers, all about making sure, that they're, getting the ROI that they sort of wanted and they hoped for and that they're paying us money for, but also just to make sure that they're satisfied. One of the things that we are really, really sort of key about, and one of the sort of KPIs that we have, is how do we make sure we are super responsive to our customers? How do we make sure that when they sort of work with us, they're not just getting another vendor, they are getting a partner relationship where they're working side by side with us as a trusted partner. So for us, it's, adoption has various variables to it. It's not just about, here's the tech solution, we're going to do one training. It's proactive. You have to keep working with your customers. You have to almost like building the solution itself. You have to iterate with them to find out what works best for that particular customer, and you've got to go on that journey with them. And I think that that's for us, key to what we do. Well
said. And again, a mentor said to me very early on, Rob, contacts are good, but relationships pay. To your point, you can have loads of clients, but how deep are you going into those relationships? How are you really delivering and enhancing value and delighting those particular clients? So I love that. And I'll just sort of share a quick analogy that I heard from Jeff Bezos. In a world where, and I'll probably butcher this, but in a world where everything is changing, everyone's looking at the next thing. Why didn't you actually stop and take a step back and think, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? And for Jeff and Amazon, it's like, he can't imagine a world one day where he'll wake up where clients are going to want their packages slower. in a longer lead time. That's probably going to continue to be, people are going to want things faster, more efficient, delivered at a certain particular time. So get fascinated about potentially those things that aren't going to change and lean all into them. And similarly, when you're talking to your clients and you're going around the world and you're speaking to them on those relationships, there's probably certain things that, you just need to go deeper in on that particular problem rather than looking at the next thing. So
and that's the hard thing, right? The hard thing is to do what is boring, right? You've built a solution that solves a problem. Great. Let's go and find the next solution that solves another problem. Let's go and find the next one. That's easy. That's exciting. That's shiny, right? That's what everyone wants to do. The hard thing is saying, hey, we've built this solution. It solves a problem, but guess what? It's just the tip of the iceberg. Like, there is all of this other stuff that we can do, and we can go really, go into the depth of doing that. But it's not as exciting, right? Because people, as human beings, when we have a natural affinity to seek adventure and seek, exciting opportunities and seek new things and seek shiny things, right? But I think that's, for me, is like part of being an entrepreneur, is knowing actually when you win customers and when you work with sort of customers, you have to really be all in helping them solve problems. And those problems may take much longer than you actually think that they will. And you just have to be patient, and you have to sort of, stick it through with them, because you're both in it, side by side, Yeah.
And you're collaborating. Collaboration's domination, say that a lot. And also the sales and consultant side of me comes in here in terms of the importance of asking the right questions.
Correct.
A simple example is, did you have a good day? Yes or no? You're not going to get the information. What did you get up to today?
Correct.
So knowing the right questions to ask those customers to ensure you're getting the information you want is super paramount as well, to take you on the path that you want to go down. Okay, I promise we'll talk about investment, and we're going to, because it's been a huge year for Definely. And Clio Ventures, obviously Clio support our show. They invested in 2025, and Clio, the world's leader of cloud-based legal technology. They've had a huge year themselves with the acquisition of Sharedo, moving into big law, obviously with VLEX as well. But how's Clio's investment, amongst others, assisted you in addressing the gap in how legal professionals interact with complex documents?
Yeah, I mean, we have been so fortunate to have an incredible investors, on this journey with us. And time again, I've been so, I have to sort of take a step back to really just appreciate the fact that I've got like a very helpful sort of and proactive investors with me. And Clio, are one of those investors where, actually when I first started the company, I actually reached out, I didn't know who he was, or he didn't know me, I knew him, but I reached out to Jack from Clio, and, I didn't get a response, rightly so. Why would he? I'm sure he gets those emails every day. So it's really nice actually that, it's sort of a full circle journey where he's now, that, Clio are now investors, and obviously Jack is the founder and CEO of Clio. But yeah, I think for us, we saw the opportunity as synergistic, like in terms of, Clio, the biggest, supply probably for sort of the mid-market and, smaller sort of law firms in terms of what they do, and being able to partner with them and to, leverage the experience that they have built over the last, sort of 2 decades is just incredible, right? They have achieved incredible things, some of which you sort of mentioned. So for us, being able to partner with them, just, it's like a dream relationship that I think any sort of small vendor would want, to be able to partner with another company that's really a leader in your sector. And I think Clio has very much established itself as one of the sort of really legal tech leaders in the space.
Yeah, well said. And yeah, I think it's been a tremendous journey for Jack and the team. And I love that story, shoot your shot, ultimately. And again, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So sometimes you've got to go out there, and it's a lovely full circle moment, obviously, when you do come to that point at the table. But let's talk about sort of improving clarity and accessibility. So the Vice President of Corporate Development at Clio, the head of Clio Ventures, who's been a former guest on the podcast, actually, Shubham Datta, shared about Definely. Their approach to improving clarity and accessibility in legal documents aligns deeply with Clio's vision for a more intuitive and inclusive legal experience. So you're obviously the co-founder. Your co-founder has a visual impairment. You've touched on Feargus in terms of accessibility in the legal sector as being key to the mission. So in what other ways is Definely continuing that sort of accessibility and inclusivity mission that you set out to achieve?
Yeah, for us, I mean, first and foremost, we do not think that there should be any barriers to the profession, right? It was unfortunate that Feargus, because he's an exceptional individual, but he still faced various barriers when he entered, and even with all of the sort of challenges he had and the hurdles he had to sort of cross to enter the profession. Once he entered, there were barriers to him actually just being able to do his work in an efficient way, or to do his work in a level playing field with his peers, right? That doesn't make any sense in this day and age, right? So first and foremost, we want to try and remove those barriers. We think about what Definely purports to do. There are, I read somewhere, there are, it's something like 1 in 5 people have some form of dyslexia, right? There are people who suffer from learning difficulties or disabilities or other, types of challenges that, something like Definely can assist with. So for us, first and foremost, is to make sure that there isn't another Feargus, who is in this profession having to sort of suffer without sort of the assistance to be able to feel confident in being able to know that what they're doing and the role that they have, they can really be as good as anybody else because of the limitations that they have from a technological point of view. And it was actually nice once we first launched Definely. There was a lawyer at A&O Sherman who was visually impaired, and he wrote about this and how Definely actually helped him become sort of much more confident and much more have a much more level playing field of what he was doing amongst his peers. And he wrote about that in the Financial Times, which is really, really nice to read about and learn about how our solution was helping somebody else who had a visual impairment. But I think generally what our solution purports to do is help to find the easiest and the simplest ways for lawyers to, work on complex contracts. That's utilizing best solutions, working with them to build the best solutions, and making sure that those solutions are really, really intuitive. And the UX, the UI is super, super simple for them, so that it becomes as easy as them as opening Microsoft Word, essentially.
Yeah, and what a beautiful story you just shared there of the A&O Sherman lawyer as well. And yeah, ultimately, and I talk about this very openly on the show, there is a bit of a mental health crisis within law. The workload, the overwhelm, tech for good, we talk a lot about. And actually, if you can bring technology in that can remove a lot of the drudgery, that can remove a lot of this time suck, and actually improve the overall well-being of being in the workplace and focus on the things that you probably trained and wanted to do as a lawyer, then we're absolutely here for it. Okay, I want to take you back to 2021 now, because Definely was part of Tech Nation's inaugural Libra program for Black and multicultural founders. Yeah. You have been recognized again, and you are the first ever graduate, I think, to make the Future 50 cohort. So what does that achievement mean for you and Definely?
Yeah, that's like, I didn't actually... it's one of those things you forget about until you sort of, it reminds you, if that makes sense. I completely forgot.
Until you get asked on a podcast.
Asked on a podcast. So I completely forgot actually that we had done the Libra program, because I remember at the time it was, when you had sort of the whole fallout with George Floyd in America and the Black Lives Matter movement. And there was a time when a lot of companies trying to do things to essentially help, people from, that community. So be it from an entrepreneurial perspective, Black founders and diverse founders. And Tech Nation sort of released this, had this program. They launched this Libra program, which was, to, as you said, support sort of Black founders and founders from sort of diverse backgrounds. And I remember when we got on the program, then Definely was very early. I'm not sure. I think we had a few customers, and revenue was not very much, and we didn't have many people in the company. And I remember reading about that program, but also reading about the Future 50 program. I was like, okay, now that's the proper program. That's the program for where their Tech Nation is saying, based on an objective field, based on, objective criteria, the companies they see as the sort of the next big things, right? The next unicorns, right? And I was like, man, I wish, I don't know how, but I wish we could one day be part of that program. And of course, you never, again, like, as I said, as Steve Jobs says, you can never connect the dots looking forward. It's always looking backwards. You're like, oh, wow, and it's such a nice sort of moment now to actually be part of that Future 50 program and to be recognized for all what we've done over the last sort of 4 years. And, I'm really proud of that, because, I think sometimes you forget just how much you've done unless you take a moment to actually just reflect. We have grown a lot. We are now sort of 100 people. Where at that time I think we were less than 5 people probably. We have over 120 customers. Back then we probably had 2 or 3 customers, right? So I think we're really, really proud of that. We're really, really proud of the sort of the growth and the maturity that we've had, but also the learnings and the lessons along the way. And that's why I can say to you, you know, at the outset of this conversation, it's really, really hard, you know, because I've gone through that. I've got the sort of the scars to prove sort of the journey we've been on. But I'm very, very proud to be. Yeah, it's really cool to be part of the Future 50 program.
Yeah, and richly deserved. And yes, entrepreneurship is hard. You have to have a high threshold to rejection and everything else that goes with it. But yeah, I love that story, and I've loved this conversation. And I guess looking at the future, then, what are the future plans for Definedly? What do you hope to achieve in the coming years? What can you share with us?
So when I started this sort of company, I remember vividly thinking, you know, why has law not had its moment like some of the other sectors, right? You know, finance, insurance, you know, why has there not been this sort of moment where a gold rush moment for law, right? And I sort of took a bet that time had to be coming sooner or later. And obviously what we've seen over the last 2 years, that time is well and truly arrived, right? And I'm so glad that we've been able to be part of that sort of capture that environment and be part of that movement. And the way I see it, this sector is only going to grow, and this sector is only going to expand, and the market is only going to get bigger. And I think that you now have a situation where the tide is rising. And I think as a company, as Definedly, our focus is making sure that we are building the best solutions. We are servicing our customers in the best way possible and making sure that we are solving their problems, because that's how we're going to stay alive, right? That's how we're going to continue to sort of, you know, thrill our customers and win customers and keep our customers, right, and delight them. And for us, if you can do those things, I think there is an opportunity to become a market leader, because the tide is riding. And as long as you do not sink and you are still there once it hits the ceiling and once it gets to you are going to, you know, you're going to be one of those companies that are sort of market leaders in your space. And I think Definedly has a real opportunity to be the market leader in what we do. We solve a problem that is, you know, we solve a unique problem. And I think we do that in the best way. And I think time will tell that. And we're really, really sort of excited about sort of that opportunity. And then sort of looking more sort of on the sort of granular level, you know, we're really excited about just continually innovating. Like we've, you know, over the last couple of months, we launched Enhance, we launched Cascade. We have so many different things that we're working on with our customers, hand in glove with them, and then just expanding globally as well. The US is a really, really important part of what we do. It's the world's biggest legal market, you know. So for us, it's about continuously to expand internationally, places like the US, Asia, and likewise.
And it's all very, very exciting. And, you know, there will be challenges along the way. Again, as a mentor said to me, new level, new devil. There will be some challenges as you go through that. But the energy, the passion just seeps through the microphone. I've just really enjoyed this whole conversation, Nnamdi. And it's no surprise why you have been able to achieve what you've been able to achieve with that sort of real understanding of business, being customer-centric, and the energy and passion you bring to things. So I guess a final question before we look to close. What would be your advice for those who are interested in learning more about legal tech and AI?
There is so much information out there now, right? I think we, you know, like when I first started, there wasn't that many information. There wasn't that many sort of places and organizations you could go to actually learn about sort of technology and law. I think now, like, it's everywhere. You just need to open up your LinkedIn. So I think you really, like, you have no excuse not to be curious. You know, you have no excuse not to be reading and keeping abreast with sort of latest developments. There's so much opportunities out there, and it's really about just being really well informed and doing your homework and really, you know, asking questions. Also, there are different ways to get into this industry, right? Not everybody has to be a founder, and I don't think everybody should be a founder. You can go and work on the sort of legal innovation side of things in a law firm. You can go and work for a tech company and sort of learn that way. You can so they're different sort of. You can go and work for an investment firm and you know focus on investing in legal tech, right? So there are different sort of ways you can look at it, but I think that there is a huge opportunity generally across the breadth of legal tech, and that's in every sort of, you know, avenue, investments, you know, working as a startup, working within sort of professional services, and I think that, you know, people should be learning, people should be, asking questions, listening to podcasts like yours, Rob, and just doing their research, because I think this is here to stay, and this is a really, really exciting time. And I think we have a real opportunity now to make sure we are part of that movement.
Yeah, and everyone talks a lot about we're moving to super intelligence and everything else, which we will. But I think we're in an age where you could do super learning. If you use the AI, like people saying there's overwhelm, if you get the right promptings within these tools, you could be learning and getting so much inputs into your ecosystem and into your education that's going to help you become a lot sharper and fitter for purpose. Really, really enjoyed this, Nnamdi. I'm sure our listeners are going to as well. And I'm sure they're going to want to learn more about you and Indeed finally. So where can they find out more? Feel free to share any websites, any social media handles. We'll also include them in this very special episode for you too.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rob. So you can find more about me. I'm on LinkedIn. So definitely can reach out to me via LinkedIn if needed. And also Definely via our website. So that's definely.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much once again. It's been an absolute blast having you on the Legally Speaking podcast sponsored by Clio. But from all of us, wishing you lots of continued success with your career and Indeed, Definely, over and out.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com. There's a link to join our community there. Over and out.